All right, hello, East Central. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight for another edition of Facebook and YouTube Live with East Central ISD. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for ECISD. I'm Brandon Oliver, and today we're going to be talking about standards-based grading. And I'm going to bring on the expert about this. So I would like to bring on Jennifer Casper. And Jennifer, introduce yourself and tell us how you're doing.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Casper. I am the Director of Curriculum and Instruction for East Central ISD and have been here since birth, a student in the district, parent in the district, teacher in the district, and now I get the opportunity to work with all the campuses. So super excited. Very happy to be here with all of you tonight.
All right, so I guess we should go in and get started. I think you need to share your screen again.
I will. All right, let me get this going.
No worries.
Couple clicks away.
All right, here we go. All right, I see it. It's up there. Yeah, we are.
So today we're going to really kind of talk about what is standards-based grading. What is this grading system that's going on in East Central ISD? Why are we using this grading system? What do these scores mean? And how, as a parent, can you help your child at home using this system? So I'm going to start by just showing you a string of numbers. And this could be any single grade level, any single content area. This could be second grade math. This could be high school world history. This could be middle school PE. And if a student received these grades in the grade book, what would the student's final grade be? There's some little options down at the bottom. And actually, depending on different grading systems, every single one of those options could be the student's final grade for a course. So that 83 could be a final grade if the teacher does a traditional average and just averages all of those assignment grades together. The 88 could be the grade if the teacher dropped the highest and the lowest grade and averaged the rest. 91 could be the grade if the teacher took the mode or the most often. At what point did the student most often perform on the content? The 92 could be the grade if the teacher drops the lowest 2 grades. And the 100 could be the grade if the final grade was determined by the student's most recent assignment or most recent piece of evidence. And so, looking at some of these grading practices many, many years ago really just caused us to dive in deep and think about what is the purpose for grades? And whatever this grade is, what does it mean? Like, what does it mean if I have an 83 in geometry? What does it mean if I have a 92 in US history? And so we really started digging in and researching different grading practices, different philosophies, and really tried to fine tune what in ECISD we want our grades to represent. So we've landed on this idea that grades have 2 primary purposes. The first purpose is that they should communicate achievement. They're communicating achievement to the students themselves, to parents, school administrators, post-secondary institutions. So it could be a college, it could be an employer, it could be a military branch, really just kind of communicating that achievement for what the student has mastered. And then a secondary purpose is to provide teachers with information for planning. So a teacher can look at how the students are performing and adjust instruction based on that information. So with that in mind, grades have to be consistent. So it shouldn't matter which teacher the student has, which teacher a student has. If it's the same course, the grading policy should be the same. So it doesn't matter if I'm in Algebra 1 at a middle school, or if I'm in Algebra 1 at the high school, or if I have teacher A or teacher B, there should be equity in how we are presenting and communicating student achievement. The grades should be accurate. So we want to make sure that those grades indicate mastery of the content of the course and not other factors such as behavior, or if someone turned something late or they did extra credit, that what you're seeing reported in your child's report card and in gradebook really indicates the student level of achievement for those standards. Grades have to be meaningful, communicating that useful information to everyone that's involved in your child's education. And they really need to support learning so that students can really get a sense of, hey, I'm really good at this. These are my next steps. This is where I want to improve. It's not about quantity. It's not about how many questions they answered or how many assignments they turned in, but it really is about the quality of learning and if students can show mastery of the standards that they're having to develop in each course. So how is standards-based grading different and what is it? So the whole big idea behind standards-based grading is that the grades are representing essential standards and skills. For most courses, kindergarten, really pre-K, all the way up through 12th grade, like your literacy, math, science, social studies, all of those courses have standards. Those are written by the Texas Education Agency, and they kind of outline, hey, these are the things that a student has to do in this course in order to master the content and be successful. And so those standards are outlined in our curriculum and our pacing guides. They kind of set the stage for what students are going to learn in each course. Some courses, if it's a dual credit course, might have standards that come from a university. And there are a couple of courses of innovation where we might have some locally developed standards. But for the most part, the content, the curriculum, the what is being taught is determined by these standards. Another thing that happens with standards-based grading is it's not about an individual assignment, but a collection of evidence that shows the student understanding. And so that can look so many different ways. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, the different ways that students can show mastery and that teachers can collect evidence. But it's not just that simple system of, I filled out a worksheet and I turned it in. I got 8 out of 10 questions right, so I got an 80. What we're designing has quite a bit more meaning than that. And we're gonna get into that in just a little bit. So when we look at the purpose of standards-based grading, our biggest important piece that we wanted to be able to give back to our community and to our parents is to make sure that those academic grades are a true reflection of the student mastery of the course content. And we want to make sure that we're communicating achievement within a specific skill. So earlier I said, what does it mean if I have an 85? As a parent, I may not know how to help my child if the only thing that I'm seeing is that my child is at an 85. But if I know, hey, my child is doing really well with addition, but they're struggling with subtraction and regrouping, now as a parent, I can help them. I can sit down and work on that skill. I can ask the teacher for some additional support or tutoring. If I want to seek an outside source, I really know where to dig in. Versus if it's just a general blanket grade, I might not know where to support. And as a student, I might not know. If I just know, hey, I've got a 65, but I don't know what skills I'm not proficient in, it's hard for me to take notes, to study, to ask for help, and to work on certain things. And so we really wanted to make sure that our grading policies and our practices are very, very clear in regards to what student mastery looks like so that we can help set everyone up for success. So if we put them side by side, right, how is a traditional system different than a standards-based? In a traditional system, all grades carry equal weights. It's typically like an averaging at the end. And if there were, 20 grades collected, it doesn't matter what standards they are, they're all added up, divided by 20, that's your grade. In a standards-based grading, this platform really promotes that idea of growth mindset because initial failures impact final grade less. Let me unpack that a little bit. So if the student is learning how to subtract with regrouping and like the borrowing and that kind of thing, if they're not successful when they first start learning it, let's say they're making a lot of mistakes, but throughout the course of the semester, they really develop that skill. And by the end of the semester, they can subtract and regroup like a master mathematician. Then those earlier scores from the beginning of the semester, they count less in that final grade than those scores that the student is showing mastery of towards the end of the semester. So that really promotes that growth mindset, and it really helps students to see that when they persevere and work on their skills, it's really reflected in their grades. In a traditional system, typically you have 1 grade per assignment, but in a standards-based system, students can turn in or submit or show evidence on 1 assignment, and a teacher can use that for evidence across multiple grades. We see this a lot, particularly in writing. So if a student writes an essay or writes a paragraph, instead of just getting 1 grade on that essay, there's evidence in that piece of work that might speak to the student's ability to construct sentences, for spelling, for punctuation, maybe even grammar, things like that, and all of those things. And those all can be entered separately and really inform both the student and the parent on the strengths of that student as a writer and what pieces the student might want to work on moving forward as they continue to write. In a traditional grading, we typically do numbers 0 through 100, and in a standards-based system, student mastery is rated on a 1 to 5 proficiency scale. We are going to go over that scale in a few minutes, and I'm going to show you some examples of what that looks like. Another thing that typically happens in a traditional grading system is that grades can be impacted by non-academic factors. So a student might lose 10 points on an assignment because they forgot to put their name on it, or 20 points because they turned it in late, or maybe they got bonus, extra credit, 20 points added to their grade because they attended an after-school event. In a standards-based grading, we really live on that crux of the grades reflect the content mastery. And those factors that are not tied to academics are removed from the academic grade. Now, they might show up in the behavior part of the grade book, but they don't impact the academic grade. So something that might be turned in late or extra credit for attending an event is not going to show up in the academic grade. But if a student's not turning in work, that might be evidence of some responsibility work that might need to happen, and that would show up in the responsibility piece of the behavior grade. So we separate those factors that don't really impact the content mastery. So teachers are constantly collecting evidence of learning. Before, I kind of said it's not just turning in a paper every single day and you get a folder at the end of the week with all of your students' work. That certainly can happen. So there are traditional paper pencil activities. Maybe a student's in a science lab and they're collecting data on a sheet. Maybe they're answering some questions on a novel that they read or an article that they read. But there are other things going on, and everything that a student does is considered evidence of learning. There are conversations between the teacher and the student. A lot of times we call these conferences, where the teacher sits down next to the student, has a conversation, is asking them questions about their learning, diving deep into those standards. And what the student says and how the student responds is considered evidence of learning. And so they, in essence, can show mastery of the standards just by having a conversation with the teacher. Sometimes the teacher is observing students and partners or in group work. And while they're walking around, they might have a clipboard and they're collecting anecdotal notes and looking for evidence that the student understands. Students might have a whiteboard out and they're solving problems on the whiteboard and holding them up. And the teacher might have kind of like we call it like a side grade book, or somewhere where they're taking notes on the side, checking off which students are showing mastery of being able to do that skill. And even though it's not something that gets turned in, it's something that the student is proving it's a task they're completing, and that's evidence of mastery. Some students put together portfolios of artifacts. We certainly see these in things like some of their electives courses, where they collect lots of different documents and artifacts of their learning. And then they have conferences with their teacher that says, 2 weeks ago, this is where I was successful. These are the things that I understood. And now this is what I'm understanding. And here's proof that I have learned more. And so all of these things kind of work together, which is why in gradebook, you might not necessarily see the assignments entered as an assignment, but they might rather be like a checkpoint. So week 1, where was my student in understanding this concept? In week 3, now where are they at? In week 6, now where are they at? I kind of think about it as running a race and jumping over hurdles. And so every time they jump over the next hurdle on the proficiency scale that I'll show you in a minute, they've moved one step closer to that mastery of learning. And all of these different pieces show evidence of that. So proficiency skills, hopefully this is a word that you've heard from your child's teacher, maybe even from your child itself. So a proficiency scale is a document, I will show you some samples in a minute, that shows the learning progression for each standard. So remember we talked about those standards that come from TEA or locally developed. It says in order to be successful as a 7th grader in this pre-biology class, these are the, I'm just going to say a number, 15 or 17 standards that a student has to be proficient in. So for each one of those standards, we have a scale that shows what the learning progression and mastery is at different levels. What does a student specifically need to do and demonstrate to show that they have that knowledge? This creates consistency across all of the courses, no matter what teacher a student has, and across all of the campuses. And these scales were developed by content specialists and teachers. They get reviewed quarterly, if not more often, and we tweak them as needed. So I'm going to take you outside of the field of education for a second, and we're going to talk about bicycling and learning to ride a bicycle. It's something that everyone has some schema around and is familiar with. And this might be a little challenging because I'm actually going to talk about these numbers out of order. And I hope that you'll see that it makes sense in a minute. But when we look at our proficiency scales, we have a scale system that starts at the 1.0, kind of at the bottom of the scale, and moves up to the 5.0. We're going to talk about the score 4.0 first. This is our target content. This is typically the grade level standard as written by TEA. This is the content that teachers are explicitly teaching. It is the focus for instruction. So in this case, the target content would be the student can ride a bicycle. So if the student can get on their bicycle and pedal down the road, they are mastering that target content at a score 4.0. Now we're going to go down one level to a score 3.0. 3.0 basically means simple content. In academics, it has some vocabulary. So what are the words that students really need to know and understand before they can do that target content? And then the prerequisite knowledge and skills. What are the skills that they need to already have with them? It might be from their grade level, might be from a previous grade level, might be background knowledge in order to be able to do that. In our example of the bike riding, this would be a student that's riding a bicycle with training wheels. So they're understanding balance, they're understanding how to maneuver, they're starting to ride a bicycle, but there's some little scaffolds and supports there. So they've still got 4 wheels now. They're riding the bicycle with some training wheels. If we move down one more level with a score 2.0 and 1.0, those are basically saying either with some help, they can do some of the things at 3.0 and maybe some of the things at 4.0, or at a score 1.0, it means even with help, they're not having any success. Like they're not able to do any of the work on the scale. In our example here, that's a tricycle because it's a completely kind of different device. They're not even on a bicycle yet. And then if we jump all the way back up to the score 5.0, that's complex content. And what that means is, in addition to what was taught at the score 4.0, students are making in-depth inferences and applications. It doesn't mean they're doing the standard for the next grade level. So it doesn't mean I'm a 5th grader and now I'm doing 6th grade math, or I'm a 7th grader and now I'm doing 8th grade social studies. It means that they're taking what was taught at grade level, that score 4.0, and they're able to apply it in different ways, apply it in different situations. So in our example here, those are kind of like the BMX bike tricks. So we like to use this example because it takes it out of context and you can really kind of understand how the scales are designed. But let's look at some real world samples that our students are engaging in. So this is an 8th grade social studies proficiency scale. We know that 8th grade is US history. And this particular standard, the shortened version of this standard, is that students have to analyze constitutional compromises. So again, if I look at that score 4.0, that's the grade level standard that students have to master. They're analyzing the Constitutional Convention of 1787, including the Great Compromise and the 3/5 Compromise. So very, very specific piece of information here. If you look at the score 3.0, you see the vocabulary words that students should really have a pretty good grasp on in order to be able to do that 4.0 content. And you also see some basic processes. So they need to be able to identify issues of the Constitutional Convention of 1787. They need to be able to describe some of those issues. They need to be able to determine the representation of states based on their population, things like that. So if a student's not successful at the score 4.0, the student and the parents now know, hey, let's look at the score 3.0 and make sure those concepts are solid, and then the student can start showing success at the score 4.0. And then if we go up to the score 5.0, that in-depth inference piece, when a student can start kind of defending their stance, taking the perspective of a delegate, or maybe researching an issue that was related, then they're really making that in-depth inference and application that goes a little bit beyond what was taught. That would be evidence of a 5.0. Let's look at an elementary example. So this is 3rd grade math. And at the score 4.0, the students are expected to determine liquid volume, capacity, or weight using appropriate units and tools. So that's the one thing they need to be able to do for this particular standard that has to do with measurement of volume and weight. So before they can do that, students really need to understand some words. They need to know what capacity is. They need to know standard units like a cup and a pint. They need to know what weight is. They need to be able to use those terms because they're going to have to use them in order to do the 4.0 content. They also need to be able to determine when is it appropriate to use a particular measurement of liquid for volume or weight. In what situation would I need to use those tools? And then at the 5.0, when they can estimate that capacity or weight for real life items and determine the difference in the estimate and the actual measurement, now they're going beyond what was taught at that score 4.0, making some in-depth inferences and being able to apply what was taught. So as a parent, when you go into gradebook, instead of just seeing first grade math 85, you're going to be able to see the breakdown by topic. So in this first grade example, we see 3 different measurement topics that represent 3 different standards in first grade math. We see place value up to 120. We see ordering numbers up to 120. And we see addition and subtraction up to 20. And if I look at the grades that this student has, I can see that there's one instance where the student was at a 2.0 on this standard, and then a second data point where the student is at a 3.0. So I can look at that as a parent and say, my student, my child is growing in their concept and their mastery of place value up to 120. I can look at the second one that's ordering numbers up to 120. And again, I see 2 data points. One is a 2.0, one is a 3.0. So I see that between those pieces of evidence, the student has shown a little bit higher level of mastery on the second one than the first one. And then I can look at addition and subtraction up to 20 and see the first data point was at a 3.5, so almost at that target content. The second data point was down to a 2.0, and the third data point is a 3.0. So I might really ask my child some questions here with, what are you understanding? It's possible that they're stronger in some of the addition pieces, maybe not the subtraction. I could really have a nice conversation with my child's teacher and say, hey, I noticed that, my child's been a little inconsistent on addition and subtraction up to 20. What are some things we can do to work on at home to help strengthen that skill? But it's not a secret anymore where it's just what does the number mean? I know that out of all of the topics that my child is working through, this is one that could use a little bit more attention. Here's another example. This is 8th grade social studies. And so again, we see 3 different standards, 3 measurement topics, comparing reasons for establishing colonies. And I can see that the student has 1 data point and they're at a 3.5, so almost at the target content for the grade level. On growth of representative government, I can see there's 2 data points. And the first data point, the student was at a 3.0, so showing mastery of vocabulary and the prerequisites. And by the second data point, they were at a 4.0. So now they are showing evidence of mastering the grade level content. So I can see that growth in that standard. And when I look at analyzing the causes of the American Revolution, there's been 3 data points and the child is holding steady at a 4.5. And so they're consistently at that 4.5. Now, what you're seeing in red is the overall grade for the course. So what happens, just a little bit of behind the scenes in the grade book, is each of these measurement topics is kind of calculated independent of each other. So we're at a 3.5 on this first 8.02B. We're at probably a 3.5. I'm trying to do math in my head. On the measurement topic for 8.3A, actually it might be a little bit higher than that because we've got some growth there. So it might be a little bit higher than a 3.5. And then on this last measurement topic, it's a consistent 4.5. And then those kind of working averages or working scores for each of the measurement topics then get averaged together to determine the final grade, working grade for the course. So right now you can see the students' overall final score right now in this course is a 3.9. So that's a little bit about what you'll see if you dive into Parent Portal and are looking at student assignments and wanting to trying to interpret what those numbers mean. On the other side of standards-based grading, not looking at academics, we also have a standardized behavior expectation scale. So our 3 measurement topics, district-wide, pre-K through 12, our expectations are that students are demonstrating safe behaviors, respectful behaviors, and responsibility. And so this proficiency scale kind of shows what the score 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 mean. For the most part, it's kind of from a rarely, demonstrating these behaviors all the way to that 5, showing that they're exhibiting exceptional levels of those behaviors, on a consistent basis. And so when you see the scores coming in for those behavior expectations, you can see exactly what those scores translate into. All of this is also explained in our standards-based grading handbook, which I'm going to show you how to access at the end of our time today. So when I think about, what parents can do to help their children, check that parent portal often. If you don't have an account, please get an account. You can put notifications into it so that you can be notified for different things. You can be notified for absences. You can be notified if a student, if your child receives a score less than, you can kind of set the parameter, like less than a 70 or less than a 85 or whatever you want. You can set it and they'll send you a text message or an email. Ask your child's teacher or your child about the proficiency scales. Teachers are using these scales with students. It's not a teacher-only tool. We are working to have these scales available in students' hands, whether it's through Google Classroom or in a binder. Students are interacting with these scales. At the end of a lesson, they might be asked to reflect on how they feel they're doing in regards to their mastery of the content. So we're seeing students highlight the standards and the learning targets that they feel confident in, and then kind of setting goals around the next step so they know what their work is. And so if you ask your child about the proficiency scale or you ask the teacher, they can certainly speak to it. In the younger grades, we have student-friendly proficiency scales, especially with our kindergartners and first graders. Sometimes those translate a little bit differently. We've got some pictorial versions and things like that. But it is something that is talked about, referenced, and used all the time instructionally. And then really just conversations about what a student is understanding, because at the end of the day, it's really not about the number grade, but it's about what the student's really understanding. And, so just asking simple questions like, what's making sense for you in science or whichever grade level or whichever content area? What skills are you working on in writing? Or what are your next steps in reaching your goal in math? One of the big things about standards-based grading that we feel is a lifelong skill is this idea of metacognition. And having students be able to articulate when the learning breaks down for them. So often a child might come up and say, I'm not understanding, or I don't get it. And the teacher might say, well, what don't you get? And the student says, well, I don't know because I don't get it. And they can't articulate. And so using these proficiency skills that really outline the content and giving students feedback in regards to what they can do well and what their next steps are really help a student to be able to say, I know that we're doing long division and I'm really solid when it comes to these 2 steps, but I don't remember what I'm supposed to do after I drop down this number. And that is a really great thing for a student to be able to articulate, because then no matter who's working with them, if it's a teacher, if it's a tutor, if it's a parent, or if it's a peer, then they know where to come in and scaffold and help support that child. And so we think about these as lifelong skills that we're working with our children on so that they know how to ask for help and that they can be active and agents of their own learning. So they know exactly where they are. There's no secret when they're taking an assessment. They come out from that assessment being able to say, you know what, I think I did pretty well because I really understood these pieces, but I might want to go back and review my notes for next time on these other pieces. So that's kind of the big picture of standards-based grading, and we could go on and on and on. And I'm going to show you in just a minute how you can reach out and get some additional information.
All right, and I wanted to bring up, Jennifer, that Mary Ray has joined us as well.
Yay, Mary's here. All right, so I'm going to ask Brandon to take us to a couple of places just to show parents some of the resources and some of the avenues that they might want to tap into. And then Mary's going to take us on a quick little tour for parents who would like some more information on how to log into Parent Portal. So I guess should I stop sharing my screen, Brandon?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
And then so we'll bring up the website here.
Okay.
There we go.
Yes, so we're on ecisd.net. And Brandon, if you can click on Family Resources, the first thing I would like to show parents is where the handbook is located. So if we go down to G, you'll see grading and reporting the EC way. That will take you to the website on grading. You get a nice message from our superintendent Toscano. And then over on the left, you will see ECISD Standards-Based Grading Handbook. It's a pre-K through 12 document available in English and Spanish. We do update it every single year. Pretty much everything that I talked about and a whole lot more are indicated in this book, this handbook. You'll see the conversion scales. You'll see how it works with transfer students, kind of anything and everything, Q&A. So please feel free to access that at all times to kind of, you know, as a first stop to maybe get some of your questions answered. And then if we go back, I want to share the Talk to Us button. So back on the Family Resources page, there's a little icon, I think, for Talk to Us, or it was here too.
It's right there.
Oh, there we go. Talk to us. And there are a couple options. So if you as a parent have a question regarding a specific course or, you know, something that's specific to the campus, you can click on the campus link and you can be directed to fill out a form. And if you put that you want a reply, then that will get directed to the appropriate person and a reply will come your way. If it's a general question about standards-based grading, if you click on the one, or if you go to the one that says curriculum, that will populate into a district form. And most likely that will come to myself, or it might come to Mary. If it has to do with the actual parent portal, it might come to one of our content specialists. And if you can leave anonymous comments on there, you can ask questions. And if you, I don't know if it's a button, I can't tell, or if it's something, maybe you put your email address. If you ask to be contacted, somebody from East Central ISD will contact you regarding your question and work with you to make sure that you're understanding or that your questions are answered. So we wanted to make sure that you have access and know about that powerful tool. And then the last place we wanted to take you to is Mary is our coordinator for student information systems, and she's our guru regarding all things that are our gradebook system, which is Parent Portal. And so she's going to walk you through how you can access Parent Portal.
All right, Mary Ray. Did she freeze? It looks like she may have been frozen.
She might be frozen.
I think she is. Either that or she's holding really still.
She's playing the statue game, Brandon.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if she gets back in. I might text her and see. But if not, we could probably at least pull up Parent Portal. So again, everything's on that Family Resources page.
There she is.
There we go. Let's see if she comes back.
Mary Ray, are you there?
No, I'm not sure. I just froze.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, so you hear me now?
We can, yeah.
Are you able to hear me? Okay.
Yes,
so
we
this
can
is
hear
the
you.
login screen. The most important thing that the parents need to know before they attempt to create an account is that they need to reach out to their campus and get the portal ID for their students, because they will need a portal ID to create their account. It's not the same as the student ID that our students use as a lunch number. So that's just very important. A lot of our parents get a little confused. But once you have that portal ID, you'll be able to create your account and attach your students. So I can't walk them through the process of creating an account because I've already got mine created, but I do have a handout for creating your account. Is there a way that I can post that here in the chat, or how would that work, Brandon?
Yes, under the comments, if you see to the right hand part of the screen, it should say comments, and you should be able to leave it in there.
Okay, let's see. So I've got the little chat there. So I'll do that here in just a second. What I was going to do is I can show you the, if they'd like to see the live version of what it looks like, I've got my grandkids' account, but I can certainly show them that just so that they can see what it looks like once they get in there. And then I'll get that, because I don't have the document uploaded into Google right now. It's just sitting on my computer, and I don't see a way that I can do an attachment.
What you may want to do then is share your screen, actually. So at the bottom,
Okay.
you should see share screen as one of the
Okay.
icons, and then
All right.
choose the window.
There we go. Let's see which tab I want. Here we go. All right. So I think
Yeah, we have
should be
it. It's up
sharing.
there. Yes, it's
Okay.
up there.
I'm not seeing it on the Facebook Live. I've got it open on my phone, so I was just watching to see. Okay, there it comes. All right, so when you first log in, you're going to be on the summary page. And on the summary page, you'll see a district message with information. And then if your campus has posted a message, you'll see a campus message, okay? Right now, our district message is just reminding parents about our grade codes, that the I stands for incomplete, and then we have no evidence codes of A for absence, RE for refusal, or T for transfer. The next thing I wanted to show you is they have these cards. So you have a card for each student that is attached to your account. It will have the name of the campus that they're attending. And then you'll also see if there are any alerts for those students. And I think that Jennifer alluded to that. You can actually go into your account and you can set alerts, and you can customize the threshold. So you can say that you want to get attendance alerts for absences or for tardies or for both. You can also, if your student is a middle school or high school student, you can opt to get alerts for absences or tardies for each period. And then with regards to grades, you can set alerts for grades that fall under a certain threshold. Let's say you want to be notified anytime your child gets a grade less than 80 or 75, then you can get an alert for that. But you can even break it down to where it's not just when their course grade falls below that. Anytime they get an assignment that falls below that threshold, you can opt to get a for that also. Now, when you're looking over here on the left-hand side, you see summary, and you see that one of these students has an orange ring around the border. That's the student that's been selected, and their name shows up here. So if I were to choose the attendance tab, it's going to show me attendance for the selected student. And then if I go to the grades tab, it will show me grades for the selected student. So you have the cycle grades screen, which actually gives you their schedule, and then their course grade over here is listed on the right. If you click on the hyperlink, this opens up that green screen that you saw earlier in Jennifer's presentation. But I can also take it a step further, and I can go over here to the left and I can click on assignments. And on the assignment screen, the default shows me every single assignment for every single course. I can filter it over here on the left, and I can select to just see science assignments. And then I click Find Assignments. This now shows me every single assignment that the student has had in science, and it shows me when the assignment was due and what the grade is for each of those assignments. So this can be very helpful because it can break it down in a little bit easier format for you to view. You can also search for assignments by specific due dates as well, if you'd like, okay? And then down here in the alerts, this is where you would set up your alerts. So I don't currently have any alerts, I don't think, set yet. No, here we go. So I can set alerts. I'm not going to scroll any further because it's going to show my cell phone number and my personal email, but this is the screen where you would go to set your notification type. You can choose to get notifications by email, or if you decide to add your mobile number to your parent portal account, you can also get text alerts. So you'll choose the notification type if it's going to be a text message or a phone call, an email, and then you go down and you start doing attendance alerts, and you can start doing your class average alerts and your assignment grade alerts. Okay, so that's a quick overview. I'm going to go ahead and work on getting that, the create your account document added to my Google Drive so I can post the link in the comments while Jennifer finishes up.
Well, it looks like we have some time for questions.
So thank you. First of all, Mary Ray, thank you very much for that. Yes, we do have time for questions, and we already have a couple from a couple of viewers right now. Jason Hart says, it's great to use the parent portal to view grades. However, they're just numbers if you can't see the work they are doing. Why are teachers not sending any work home for parents to review so we can work on the things our children are struggling with?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that might come into play there. Our students are still doing a lot of things virtually. Even though students are back in the classroom, a lot of our teachers are still utilizing Google Classroom, and students are submitting work via Google Classroom. And as a parent, you can get access to some of those pieces. Some teachers are sending work home with grades on them if it's something that they're doing, like a paper or an essay, something like that, and the teacher writes feedback on it and gives it back. Kind of like I talked about earlier, some of those grades and those pieces of evidence are coming from observations where the teacher's taken anecdotal notes. So our recommendation is please reach out to the child's teacher and just kind of say, hey, what can you send home so that I can help my child work on X, Y, and Z, or maybe even having a conference either virtually or in person, and parents can show that work to you. If they're holding on to something, they can certainly send it home. But those conversations tend to be super valuable because it might not be something that a parent would understand going home, but a teacher can sit down and explain. So a teacher can pull up something like a running record where they have taken notes on a child's reading and kind of coded where the mistakes are, and kind of have a conversation and be able to say, hey, they're struggling with decoding, words that have more than one syllable that end in the letter E or something, and then give you some things to work on with your child. So please reach out to your child's teacher, have that conversation with them. Our teachers are always willing to have those conversations with parents because we're all definitely wanting to help make sure that all of our kids are successful.
All right. So again, Mr. Hart, first stop is to reach out to your child's teacher. And as Jennifer said, there's quite a few reasons, maybe, like you said, could be on Google Classroom, could be observations. So reach out to your child's teacher. So let me bring up another one here from Bridget. And I believe this came up during Mary Ray's presentation. Are these the only assignments and assessments that make up the child's grade?
So this is a really interesting question, and the answer is a little complicated. The word assignment can be a little misleading. The word assignment is something that is part of the Ascender gradebook parent portal platform that we really can't change. And so traditionally, when you think of the word assignment, you think of it as a tangible piece of paper or an essay that was turned in or a test or a quiz. An assignment, as it shows up in our grade book, could be many different things. It could very much be one assignment, a paper, an assessment, an essay, that kind of thing. It can also mean a collection of evidence or a body of evidence that's been analyzed over time. So let's say we start teaching a lesson on fractions on Monday, and the students are working in their journal, they're doing things on a whiteboard, they're playing games with fractions, and as the teacher's walking around, she's listening to their conversations, watching their work, taking notes, and then on Friday, maybe she sits down and looks at all of their work and says, this is what they were able to demonstrate in their notebook, when I had a conversation with them, this is what they were able to show me. When they were working in this small group on a dry erase board, this is what they were able to do. All of those pieces together indicate that the student is maybe at a 3.5. They're understanding vocabulary, they're understanding the prerequisite skills, but maybe they're missing a couple of pieces when they have to add fractions with different denominators. So they're taking that body of evidence and saying and putting into the grade book, even though it says assignment, it's kind of like a checkpoint. And so by this point in time on Friday, the student has mastered the 3.0 content, not quite mastered the 4.0 content. So their grade in this point in time is a 3.5. That represents their mastery of learning, and it takes into consideration all of the work that the child has done with that standard across the week. And then a couple another days go by, maybe the teacher does another checkpoint and then enters that grade in grade book. So it's kind of difficult to answer that question with a yes or no, but there's nothing hidden. So, the grades that are in there, just know that some of those numbers might represent multiple pieces of evidence that have been collected from the students to show mastery. So even though it might look like the teacher only took 2 grades or there's only 2 grades in there, those are really just 2 checkpoints. That's kind of like 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks worth of different pieces of evidence that the teacher was collecting from the student. And if you're wondering what those look like and what those mean, again, we ask you to reach out to your child's teacher. A lot of times they will work with the parent and kind of show those anecdotal notes that they've been taking. It does kind of depend on the teacher, but it's part of our system as a whole. So teachers are collecting evidence, but it's always against the standard. And so teachers have the autonomy on how they're collecting that evidence. It might be that there is a tangible piece of paper today. It might be that it's a sticky note, exit ticket out the door at the end of a lesson. It might be that so-and-so was unsuccessful on this assignment or this paper, so the teacher had a conversation, or maybe the student was absent, and instead of having them do the entire assessment or an entire assignment, they have a little, kind of conference and get evidence that way. So one of the cool things about those proficiency scales is that it doesn't matter how the student is showing the knowledge, and it doesn't matter so much how the teacher is gaining that information, because the scoring is streamlined across every teacher, every course, across the district. That score indicates the level of proficiency and where the student's at on that learning progression on the scale. I hope that answered your question.
All right. Bridget, thank you very much for the question, and hopefully that answered it for you. If you have a follow-up, you can certainly ask it right now, and we'll keep it going for just another couple of minutes, just in case there are any last-second questions about standards-based grading. But Jennifer did a fantastic job. I mean, that was a lot of
it's a lot of information.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's a lot of information.
And there's a whole team behind the scenes. So thank you to everyone on Standards-Based Grading Advisory Council that worked on this piece and really helped us figure out what the best way is. And we even had some parents take a look at it today and look at it through the lens of parents to see what have we not mentioned that's confusing, so that we can try to really address what our parents would really want to know. So thank you to everyone that was a part of that.
And so, this video, even though we're live right now, it's always going to live here. We're never going to delete it. So you can go back to the exact same YouTube and Facebook links to check out this video again. We'll post it on our website too. So that way, if you ever have any sort of questions, or want to go revisit something back in this video, you can at your convenience. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. There's a nice comment there from Shannon Fuller. Amazing job. Oh, actually, there is a question that came through from Sarah. So it comes right in at the very end. Yep. There's a whole bunch.
Of course.
So kids get scores over time. Why do they still have to take state testing?
I so wish that I had the answer to that question. Unfortunately, state testing is outside of local education agency control. Those things, are, legislature, determined, and TEA determined. And so, it just like anything else, it is one measurement. It is a dipstick. It is one moment in time on how a child shows their knowledge on that one given day. And so fortunate here at East Central ISD that our community, our teachers, our administrators, our board really value student growth and achievement by multiple measures, not just what, a state test score measures. And so, everything that we can do in the essence of supporting student lifelong learning that will transpire far beyond the years that they're here at East Central, we do. And then sometimes we just do have some compliance pieces that we have to comply with, such as state testing.
Sarah, yeah, definitely. I like how Miss Melvin here said, great question for TEA. Sarah, that's really a TEA, state level. Your legislatures and your representatives, legislators and representatives. Those are the ones that you would want to contact about state testing, because that's much bigger than East Central. So. All right, so I am going to, keep an eye out just in case there's another question. But if not, bring Mary Ray back on one more time, and give you ladies an opportunity. Any final comments either of you want to give our viewers?
I would just say, please, be a communicator with your child's teacher. We're all in this together. We're all in different phases of learning this system and implementing this system. And our goal is to be as transparent as possible with student learning so that we can all work to help the students reach all their goals, both while they're in school and, like I said, beyond their years.
And Mary Ray, I think she got frozen. Did she freeze? Now I just see a black screen.
It's like the curse of being a technology guru, and you get frozen.
Yeah. All right. So Mary Ray, thank you very much for your time tonight. Jennifer Casper, thank you as well. And again, you can check this out at any time. Go back to the same links and watch it again. If you miss something, go back and watch it. And we'll see you soon for another edition of YouTube and Facebook Live at East Central. Good night.
Thank you, Brandon.